successful deliberations of which the results will help this country and farmers of this country. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bwana CS. Let me now hand over the program to Professor Kamar to take us through.
Thank you very much, Chair. As we are all aware, agriculture is a devolved, agriculture is fully devolved in the current system of governance in this country. And thank you, CS, for highlighting what you have done and the devolution that you have done. There are a few issues that I'll be asking the governors to react to, which you have said. But before I raise the ones that I want them to react, I want them to react to a few questions. First, let me ask Governor Mandago, now that agriculture is fully devolved, we are also aware that the national government and development partners continue to channel funding through the Ministry of Agriculture. And we don't know whether that reduces the amount of money that comes to the devolved units or not. We are not sure how many offices were closed in Kilimo when this was devolved. Please, can you comment on that?
Thank you very much, Professor. First and foremost, let me say, as county governments, we do appreciate that 90 to 95% of the functions in aggregate are devolved. And as counties, we have taken those functions with a full stride. However, as per what you are asking, that is an area where we still find we have some real challenges, because when the fundings or most of the programs that are donor funded in nature go through the ministry, sometimes they don't synchronize with the county-specific priorities in agriculture. And there are specific interventions in every county that have been put in place to boost production and improve agriculture. In the absence of consultation and aligning the programs that come from national with those of the county, then those funds at the end of the day don't end up improving our productivity as a unit in agriculture. And therefore, what we would really be asking to work with the ministry very closely is that any intervention that has to come through the Ministry of Agriculture to a specific county, there should be adequate consultation with that county so that those programs can be more productive. But we also wish to appreciate the fact that the county and the ministry has been more than willing. We have seen agencies in the Ministry of Agriculture being proactive and willing to engage. I think that is an opportunity that needs to be exploited moving forward.
Thank you. Maybe let me ask for a comment from Governor Nyagarama. What are the real challenges that you see agriculture-based in the counties currently?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I also want to say from the start, that agriculture plays an important role. Apart from the fact that it gives us sustainability in terms of food, it also plays an important role in many of the counties which do not have any other resources like, gold and the rest of it all. But this sector has been, bedeviled by a lot of challenges that I've seen it not doing fairly well. But there are myriads of problems. One of them is first and foremost budgetary allocation, which is not enough, because if agriculture has got to go forward, then we must allocate enough money. We are saying that at the county level, we must allocate enough money. There is apathy from the youth, because many of the many of the farmers who are doing farming activities now are those of our age, and the youth who happen to be 65% of our population are not fully involved because it has not been taken as a business, and the youth do not look at it as employment. So there is that need of talking to the youth because they are the bulk of our population to be involved in agriculture. A big challenge in that regard is that many youths do not have enough resources to go into agribusiness. They do not have land. In some of our traditional societies, land belongs to the old man, and the youth do not have enough land. They do not have access to capital. They do not have title deeds. And the method of farming is not technologically advanced. As a consequence, the youth will not be involved, and therefore that is a big disadvantage. A lot of land now in areas, because of the pressure of population, the land is reducing. And a lot of it, some of it is being diverted into various activities that are not related to farming. Compare, for example, land that has been diverted into use of residence or residential buildings and the like. There are also other, there are also a lot of pressure coming from the levies that the government imposes on the agriculture sector. Take an example of the tea sector, the coffee sector, where in tea, where I worked for many years, for more than 20 years as a director of the national body, about 20 or so % of the cost of input, that is fuel, goes to the government levies. The cost of inputs, like fertilizer, the availability of that fertilizer within the right time and the right quantity and quality are not available for the farmers to use. I do not know, madam, whether you want me to go through all the challenges that I bedeviling the sector. I would continue and continue and continue, but I really want to stop there now for the time being, to give somebody else a chance to talk about some of these things, madam.
Yeah, you have given us a number of challenges. What are counties actually doing to deal with some of these challenges, specifically when it comes to inputs?
Yes, we are talking about solutions that, as I was talking about land use, I was also giving some of the solutions. For example, there should be enough policies, adequate policies to define what land is to be used for, what land is to be used for what. That is a policy that would come up and define that we set aside. After all, what we eat comes from our land. If every piece of land is taken up into residential, in an area, then that one becomes a problem. We have also cartels. That in the agricultural sector, people take advantage because of inadequate, synergized, marketing policies. People take advantage and they form cartels known as middlemen. These ones can be done away by having smooth policies that govern the marketing of our products. I have also talked about the youth, and I've said that the youth should be enticed, that parents should be willing to give land, that our parents, that the government should give ease access. Like in counties, we have had youth empowerment programs where you may set aside some money for accessibility to the youth so that they could then take up farming. levies could be reduced by the government and related agencies. There is also the question of policies that would address climate change, which is also a big problem in this particular sector. We should also, in order to increase, earnings to the farmer, we must do value addition. The value chain must be changed from where we are, because a lot of our products are sold to other areas, to other countries in raw form, and therefore the income to the farmer is hence reduced.
Thank you, Governor.
I think I can stop there, Madam.
Yes, I'll be coming back to Governor Mandago on that issue of value chain also. But before I do that, Governor Kayemba from Trans Nzoia, the grain basket. How can counties harness the agriculture, livestock, and fisheries sectors so that this becomes an economic growth factor, as it has always been in this country, now under the devolution concept?
Thank you very much. I would want to add one key thing on the challenges. One of the biggest challenges we are facing is low productivity in agriculture caused by soil acidity. That is mainly attributed to monocropping and overuse of one type of fertilizer for very, very many years. What our county is doing on this? We have introduced soil analysis and testing to determine the type of suitability of fertilizer, and some of our subsidized programs for fertilizer are geared towards marketing new fertilizers that are non-acidifying to our soils. My call has been that we should have a national program to lime all our agricultural land in this country, because across the country where we've been practicing agriculture, acidity is a main challenge. Secondly, just to talk again on the low productivity and high cost of production, is caused by low mechanization and low uptake of technology. Countries have now moved from the traditional tilling systems into conservation management, where you use no-till, which cuts the production by about 30%. I can tell you that my cost of producing maize in Trans Nzoia is about 40% above the international cost of maize. So our maize can never be competitive. We need now to invest in technologies that can bring down those costs. Land fragmentation is an issue we need to face and take it by the horns. I know it's a very difficult issue, but we must have a starting point. My recommendation on the starting point is that, one, let me put it this way. Unless we have economies of scale in farming, we can never be competitive. Europe and elsewhere, people have moved out of the farms, but in this country, we value land so much that we are fragmenting and causing slums in rural areas as I speak now. That is, we're wasting all our agricultural land in sort of settlements that could have avoided. What could be the starting point? To me, the starting point would be to preserve the large-scale farms so that they don't get fragmented. If it's an individual's farm, if you own 1,000 acres, you may possibly consider forming a company and giving your children shares so that your child can sell shares instead of selling the land. And then we can cascade that downwards by looking at systems and methodologies that are acceptable to our people, but that can help preserve agricultural land. To me, that's very critical. What are we doing as counties? It was mentioned here that we have a duplicity of strategies and policies. And it was mentioned that a number of counties do not have strategies. I know in my own county we have put in place a strategy, an agricultural sector strategy. And a number of counties are also doing the same. Apart from the legal framework, which I want to encourage the ministry to consult us very closely, the issue of mechanization also, a number of counties are taking the lead, like introducing the chiseling type of agriculture or no-till system where you use the sprays, you use the chisels, then you plant. The advantage is it breaks the hard pan that has formed across our landscape in the country, allows more water to be retained, and therefore in these days of climate change, the crops can be more resilient. It also reduces soil erosion because most of the water is absorbed down. But finally, the cost of farming will be reduced. A number of us are getting those equipment. We've made soil analysis and testing the order of the day now. A county like Bungoma has 3 soil testing machines which are helping the farmers. The farmers are now used to the practice of testing the soils annually or biannually. That is going to be very important. We have also, as I said, created field days where we practice some of these technologies we are talking about, using them to engage and educate the farmers. Additionally, I talked of monocropping having a major challenge in a place like Trans Nzoia, where we have done maize for over 50 years. We are introducing crop diversification. Through that, things like tissue culture, banana, coffee are being introduced, and the counties are subsidizing these crops as they educate and engage the public to uptake these crops. We feel that is going to be very critical. Issues of value addition are now part of what my colleague said. We are looking at value addition at local levels so that raw products do not just go out and be sold at, middlemen have been taking advantage. We have issues of marketing. Marketing has been a main challenge. If we add value addition, we make value addition, it will partly address the issue of marketing. But equally, the markets, local markets, wholesale markets and retail markets for our farmers are very, very important. You go across the counties, most of the counties are actually putting in place those markets. Of course, promotion of good practices in agriculture through extension and so forth, this is something that we are really doing. Use of new technologies, irrigation, drip irrigation. It's something in some of the parts of these countries, it has done very well. But in some parts, it's completely absent. I've seen counties across taking up these new technologies and introducing them where necessary, even subsidizing them over the few the initial stages. Let me end there. To address agricultural issues, a session like this will be doing a disservice because this is a sector that carries the economy of this country. We needed more time to give it justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. But I wanted you to follow up and make a comment on one policy issue that you have raised, the land size in this country. You are talking of preserving large scale. We know that previously the debate was we want to have a ceiling on the maximum land that can be owned. How do you see it going forward? Although I'll be asking the minister also to comment on that.
I'll give my
and if you can answer that one in half a minute.
I'll give my personal view. This is not a view of the county or county governments. My personal view is that we need to encourage preservation of large-scale farmers. We need also to introduce the fact that even if I'm a whole of the farm, I don't have to be the one farming. I can lease it, and a good farmer can lease several parcels so that you have like 10,000 acres available to a single farmer. Technology, application of technology in those farms is very easy. You can spray using an aeroplane. You can't do that on a small-scale farm.
You're talking of amalgamation of land also.
I think we need to move in that direction.
Governor Mandago, so I can go back. On the issue of cartels and the issue of value addition, I think that was...
Thank you very much, Professor. I think on the issue of cartels, that would be best answered by the ministry. However, as players in the sector, particularly in the grain-growing regions, the one serious cartel we have is the one for fertilizer. And I think this This calls for the participation of the farmers themselves, the agricultural officers at the county, and at the national government. Sometimes national government does their best to ensure we have fertilizers in our national cereals and produce board depots. But you find the cartels working with our farmers and some of our staff collecting the same fertilizer and repackaging for sale again to the same farmers. And at the end of the day, the government subsidy programs goes to subsidizing cartels in the sector. I think what we need to do is to pass stringent laws so that those who are caught repackaging subsidized government fertilizer can be dealt with in accordance with the law. But we also want to tell the farmers themselves to also take responsibility and ensure that the vetting process that normally happens, they have a hand, and also volunteer the information. But I think the strategy to ensure that we read the cartels in most of the sectors is to empower the farmers' cooperative movements so that these fertilizers or inputs can move directly from the source to the cooperative society. And I think that way we should be able to reduce the involvement and the role of cartels. Of course, there are cartels in most sectors like coffee that starts from marketing to sell. And at the end of the day, you see what the farmer earns as compared to what the cartels in the sector earn. The cartels earn more than 110% of what the farmer earns. And I think we need to support the farmers to take charge of marketing of their products. In terms of value addition, what we need to do now is in the value chain is to encourage those cooperatives to move from selling their produce and products as raw materials, but we want to encourage and support them now to begin establishing small cottage industries at farm level and at the cooperatives level, so that they are also able to sell finished products and fetch more for the farmer.
Thank you very much. I would now go to the other panelist, Robert Albert. Robert, you are aware that agriculture is fully devolved according to our constitution. Would you please make a comment on development partners and non-state actors, how they align their support to the county priorities, and how this has helped in equitable distribution of resources in the agriculture sector?
Thank you very much. It's really a question of two parts. So I'll start on the first part in terms of how development partners have really aligned their work with the priorities of the counties. And before looking at that, we've really got to recognize the situation that development partners are working in. They are trying to align their priorities to 47 different county integrated development plans. Some of them are really excellent plans, but they were developed in a vacuum. There was no overarching agricultural policy to drive their development or to direct their development. So essentially what we have is a lack of focus. And if development partners want to focus on some of the key global objectives, zero hunger, for example, which is critical for agriculture, they really need to narrow down on the specific areas that they work on in order to have impact. So what has happened there is, although a new policy is now being developed, as the CS said, and we hope that comes out very soon and will help drive this process, but in the interim, development partners has really worked on developing large overarching programs, like the Ending Drought Emergencies program, for example, that has been developed in collaboration with the national government and the county governments to try and define what are the real foundations of development that we can target in order to really perceive change at that level. It's not been easy, and moving forwards, what is critical, and was also mentioned by the CS, is the intergovernmental units that can really work between the counties, between the national government, and also help engagement by the non-state actors. What is critical within those units is they have decision makers. They have true buy-in from the national government and the county governments, and that there are decision makers from the counties sitting on those units so that decisions can happen and things can move forward much faster. If we then look at the equity of where money goes, I come back to the question of, is our malnutrition figures the same in all different counties? Clearly the answer is no. A lot of development partners will focus their money where there are higher levels of malnutrition. Or, for example, if their priority is looking at increasing agricultural production, they'll focus their funding on the areas where there is greater potential to increase that production. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Kabira, how can the two levels of government collaborate to guarantee food security for the current and the future generations? And please remember, agriculture is going agribusiness. How do we balance the agribusiness side, the commercial side, and the food security side? And I'll be asking Robert to comment on that one also. How do we balance? So first, how can the two levels of government collaborate?
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. Let me begin by maybe saying something about how well we are doing in food security, and then I'll talk about how the two levels of government can come together. I think we are not doing well. According to research which was carried out by Kenya National Bureau of Statistics and Nairobi University, 2013-2014, 18% of Kenyans go to bed hungry. We are actually talking about chronic hunger, where many of them say they either go to bed hungry always or sometimes. 18%, if you take 40 million to be the population, is about 7.1 million. So we are not doing well in terms of food security. The study also shows that 43% of those who go to bed hungry are own producers, meaning they are the small-scale farmers. They are the ones we are talking about, in the counties who are actually trying to grow their own food. And if it is 43%, it means that that's a huge number of people that go to bed hungry. It means the issues like the governor from Trans Nzoia is talking about and how to utilize the land becomes critical. Land reform becomes a major issue. Now, the population, by the way, the difference was, for instance, Turkana, which was the highest in terms of food insecurity at 54, with the Kirinyaga being 3%. But there was no single county out of the 21 that were researched where you had actually, which was food secure. One of the most striking things about this research was that some of the traditionally known food secure counties, such as Kisii and Migori, are actually doing badly. And that discussion went on even in the social media and in the regular media, in the mainstream media. And the same thing about the distribution of land, the small pieces of land which are not feeding the people became a major issue. Now, out of the 43% were own producers, but we also have the 20% who are small-scale traders. We have another 20% the other 20% who are laborers, on the farms, on the agricultural land. And therefore, when you think about food security, and this is why it is important for us to think about how the two arms of government, work together, is that those who are doing agricultural trade and those who are actually casual laborers will need different interventions from those who are actually own producers. So you want to deal with each of the categories depending on their needs. So agriculture is one of the main things that is going to deal with food security, but there are many other areas and many other sectors that are involved. You think about employment generally at the national and county level as a major source of food security. You think about the markets and trade as a major source of food security. You think about the infrastructure that is going to make sure that the farmers are able to sell their food, to take their food wherever it is supposed to go. You think about employment, and you also think about social security. And therefore, in terms of dealing with food security, it's a multi-sectoral function, and therefore it will not just be the Ministry of Agriculture, it will be the Ministry of Labor, it will be Ministry of that deals with infrastructure, it will deal with many other sectors. And this is important because in some countries like South Africa, what they have done is actually mainstream food security in all sectors. So even if you're going to build a road from Nairobi to Garissa, the question you have to answer is, how is this going to affect food security? What are the challenges that are going to come? And how are you going to deal with these issues? So it's a very, very important issue to consider that food security goes beyond agriculture to other sectors. In addition, we need a very clear, if you like, policy. If you look at the devolved functions, it is true that most of the functions in agriculture are devolved. And I know we have worked with Ministry of Agriculture, but there are still many activities that are going on from the central government, from the Ministry of Agriculture, that belong to the county government. And I think earlier on in the first session, when we talked about the health, the donors in health, working together to actually fund directly, to the counties, is the similar position that one would take for agriculture. For instance, and it's not just the Ministry of Agriculture, it's also other ministries like labor. Why would cash transfer be coming from the Ministry of Labor? Those people who know the very poor and those who deserve the food and the elderly and so on are actually the county government. They are the ones who are closest to the people, and I think that is what decentralization is about. And I think if you're even thinking about the many programs that we have in the Ministry of Agriculture, Jama, Rufuku, and others, that if that money from the donors was funded directly to the county government, then it would increase, if you like, the management of food security related issues. And I think that is one of the things that probably needs to be done. Interpret Schedule 4 in such a manner that it will be very, very clear and have guidelines about how to deal with all the devolved functions within agriculture, so that the different roles are very clear. Because it is true that the central government has a major role to play in food security, given the fact that it deals with all these other sectors. And the county government has also many roles to play, and probably more resources should be going to the counties to, even if you're thinking about employment, the employment is also being created at the county level. So we need to invest in agriculture. When the main speaker spoke about the 10% Maputo declaration on investment in agriculture, 10% of our national budget, the question maybe one can ask is, how much of that 10% should go to revamping agriculture at the county level? Because I think if that is the commitment we have made, then we also need to think about the formula of how much of this money will remain at the policy-making level, and for how much of this is go to the county level if we want to develop agriculture, because it is a major issue. So I think that is investing in agriculture in terms of these resources is important. There are some best practices. Ethiopia, for instance, has moved from 55% of people living below poverty line to 29% in a short time. And some of the people working with the Ethiopian government say that it has to do with the policy and ensuring that the policy is implemented, and it's a multi-sectoral kind of business for everybody in the government to ensure that that poverty is eradicated and food security, of course, is dealt with. So Brazil, which is another good example, and which
I have a minute.
Oh, 1 minute.
Half.
Okay, half a minute. Okay. Brazil, by the way, has very, very good models of targeting a specific village, for instance. And I was just thinking that we have made some of these recommendations. Being able to know where are the 7.1 million Kenyans in each county, because you can find them. And now with the participatory governance and with the leadership at the community level, including, the ward administrators and so on, and the villages themselves. People will tell you who actually are poor in that village. And I think it is possible to target that and then be able to deal with that. Now, there's also, by the way, sorry, South Africa, I think I've said mainstreams this, but the question of county statistics, the county statistics, so that you know, okay, for instance, I think there are about 6,000 families in Kirinyaga. That was the lowest, 6,000 families. To be able to know who are these families and can they move from food insecure status to actually become food secure. And I think it can be done. Then you target them. And then the use of technology. We've been talking about using technology to reach these women, so that these men and women, the families themselves, to make sure that we have, we are able to deal with their needs, whether they are people who need cash transfer, or whether they are people who need increased production, or whether they are people who need information related to livestock production, etc., so that we are actually meeting their needs when we are handling food security. The last one, the very last one, which there's a relationship between women's economic empowerment and food security. The study also showed that 75% of income that women get goes to buy food, health-related issues, to education and so on. So it is a very, very important thing. We can't deal with food security without dealing with women's economic empowerment. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a minute for Robert?
Half a minute, right. Again, if you look at the difference between modern agriculture and ensuring food security, you've got to look at the overall picture. The overall picture is Kenyan's population is increasing by 1 million people a year. So you've got 1 million more mouths to feed, 1 million more mouths to provide water to every single year. Modern agriculture in that setting is not an option, it's a necessity. We have to move with modern agriculture. But there are a number of things that we can focus on to ensure that we maintain food security and particularly nutrition security. So I've got a very small list for. The first is to maintain and improve the natural resource base. We could talk about liming land, for example, but critically as well is water, our water towers. You've got the obvious ones like the Mao Forest, and the less obvious ones like Lorogi Forest in the drylands in Samburu, for example. Those are critical for our agriculture. If we're unable to protect them, Kenya's agriculture will suffer. Diversify production. Again, it's something very easy to talk about, very easy to say. There need to be specific policies enabling marketing factors to pull people into other forms of production other than maize. Critical among this as well, particularly for nutrition, is ownership of livestock. Studies have shown that people that own livestock have much better access to nutritious proteins than people who don't. Thirdly is empowering women and youth. Women in this country provide the main agricultural labor base, yet they have less access to the factors of production, land, inputs than men do. If we can change that, we can increase agricultural production. The same with youth. It's been said before, youth have very limited access to land. Can we involve them in other parts of the value chain to ensure that they are involved in agriculture? Agriculture is the largest employer in the country, so it has a responsibility to try and engage youth and pull them into agriculture. And then finally, improving storage, so that farmers can store their own food, keep it without it getting infested, but also introduce more warehouse receipting systems so that they're not constantly at the mercy of the markets. Thank you.
Thank you very much.